Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the legend of the Crimson Avtar, part 2. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. The captain, along with his forces, continued to glare at the person that was in front of them, raw red energy dancing around him like a cloak with his markings glowing like a hot sun. Unnerving them, scaring them as the intruder continued to glare at them with those glowing, blood-red eyes, seeing the raw power that was ready to be unleashed through those eyes, but suddenly, the cloak that surrounded him disappeared as the blond man slowly fell to one knee. Trying to support himself with his left hand placed onto the snowed ground, panting hard as he felt disoriented, the tattoos stopped their glow, becoming nothing more than black markings on his body. Then the gears inside his head began to turn as the captain remembered that the unknown person had just escaped from his frozen prison, and his body wasn't accustomed just yet to moving on his own, making this the perfect chance to attack since the intruder wouldn't have a chance of defeating him. Especially when he had more than 200 men with him, there was no possible way he could be defeated. He's weak. Attack! Shouted the captain as he shot both his hands forward, along with his army as they launched large current of flames at the man and the villagers, mixing in the end as it became one giant fire blast. Seeing the flame heading straight at them, the villagers screamed as they scooted closer to each other, fearing for their lives as the inferno kept getting closer and closer, crying as they pleaded for the man to save them, but he just stayed keeled, unresponsive. The same little girl that was saddened when Aang left the village, sprouted her head out of her mother's arms and shouted at the man. "Mister! Watch out! Where am I and why is everything so damn foggy?" Thought Naruto, still feeling disoriented after breaking free, and tried to stand up but his body felt heavy and unresponsive. What's going on? Then slowly everything started to come back to him. I remember now. Sasuke threatened to destroy the village as he launched an attack. I foiled his plan by destroying his forces and chased him towards the Valley of the End. We fought and caused a big explosion and then nothing, thought Naruto as he clutched his face in frustration with his right hand as he forced his mind in trying to remember, but nothing came. "Mister! Watch out!" A voice suddenly called out to him, causing to look up as his vision finally cleared up only to see a giant flame heading straight at him and the people behind him, watching the flames just be a few feet away from him. With the flames just being a few feet away, the blonde rapidly jumped to his feet to intercept the raging flames as he shot his hand forward with an open palm, with his legs apart in order to get a better route into the ground, parting the flames at the middle, only to cause them to go around and on top of them as it engulfed them. Causing everyone to scream in sheer fright as the villagers saw the fire encircling them, entrapping them a big dome of fire. Smirking, the captain believed everyone to be dead as he watched the flames dance around in the dome. Within the fire dome, everyone was looking with astonishment and fear as they saw that the fire had not touched them and the man that blocked the attack was, in fact, controlling the fire itself as he waved his hands around while taking deep breaths with his eyes closed. And then he suddenly stopped the rhythm of his hands as he stood still with his hands closed together in a prayer in front of his chest and exhaled the air he held inside his lungs while bringing his hands down slowly till his hands were facing palm down. And the unthinkable happened as the villagers of the water tribe witnessed with their own eyes. The fire began to change colors from orange/red to pure white, the heat becoming more intense than regular as the villagers began to sweat, cringing even more. Sensing their fear, Naruto turned towards them and smiled softly. "Don't be afraid, I won't harm you," he said softly, "trust me." The villagers were skeptical of him, sure he saved them from being scorched from the dome itself, but he was still a firebender, and firebenders were never to be trusted. "Trust him, we must. Harm us, he will not," said Gran to the villagers, shocking them completely, for they know that she lost a best friend and a daughter to the Fire Nation, and yet, she's asking them to trust him. "But elder, he's a firebender!" screamed a teenage girl as she glared hatefully at Naruto. "They are the cause of this war and lost so many loved ones." "War? I thought I abolished the forthcomings of war when I killed Madara and ended the Fourth Great War," thought Naruto confusedly, but was brought out of his thoughts when the elder spoke again. "No child, he's not a firebender entirely." Now this had confused them completely. How could he not be a firebender if he was bending the fire to his will? "I'll explain everything later, but just trust him like I have learned to trust him," said Gran to her fellow villagers till she finally faced Naruto. "We are in your hands." Naruto just simply nodded his head in acknowledgement, and resumed his pose as he started to concentrate it again, his tattoos beginning to glow once again as he folded both of his arms in front of him, left arm over his right, and slowly broke them apart, one going up and the other going down. Doing a circular motion with arms while his hands were open-palmed, slowly parting the dome horizontally while slowly, Naruto began to deeply inhale the flames. Seeing no signs of the villagers surviving the assault, the captain turned back to his vassal. "Men, let's head back to base," the captain ordered his men as he barely took the first step, only to stop once he felt a heat far more intense than a regular flame could make, his shadow being more defined by a bright flare. Turning around, he gasped in shock when saw the dome had changed color. White flames. "How is this possible?" thought the captain in astonishment as he and every firebender took a step back in fright as they witnessed the fire began to flare up even more as the dome was being opened from the middle, revealing this monster that survived their most powerful attacks. And waved it off as if it were nothing as he now had completely parted the dome and slowly inhaled the flames till none of them remain, making his body turn red from the intense heat his body contained within, the ice and snow around him melting at a fast rate as he just stood there, unharmed and unscathed, with the villagers behind him very much alive as well. "What the hell are you?" shouted the captain in fear and anger, but his only reply was a glare before the blonde reared his head back as he brought his right hand up close to his mouth, and brought his head back forth, exhaling the fire in a giant torrent of white flames from his mouth directly at the small army of firebenders. Some tried to disperse it away but found out that they could not bend the flame, and were engulfed by the fire. At the last minute, the captain jumped to the side with only his left leg being lit aflame, gritting his teeth at the exhilarating pain he felt on his leg. The captain barely turned back only to see most of his crew being cremated by the fire as it kept surging forward towards the two naval fleets, hitting them dead on as it created a large explosion, killing every man that was inside those ships in the process. Only to leave nothing but a pile of burnt skeletons with their flesh burnt to the bone and melted, burnt steel after the fire had dispersed and, with a scorched trail within the village. Naruto then turned his attention at the remaining ships that afloat afar the tribe, while the villagers just stared in shock at the power this man possessed, making Gran confirm her theory as to who he was. "He is real," thought the elder as she stared at the man's back, "the avatar of 4 dragons does exist." Terrified the captain was, as he had felt firsthand the power of this demon, and hastily, he bended a small ember in his hand and launched it into the air, making it explode as it reached a certain height to signify his naval fleet to launch an all-out assault. On one of the Navy ships, a helmsman using his binoculars, watched the whole ordeal through the BEE pit, watching in disbelief as one man just obliterated a small army of firebenders without struggle. Desperately, he looked for survivors only to spot the captain clinching his leg as he gathered fire in his hand and shot it upward, making it ignite. Watching the flare in the sky, he knew what the captain had ordered and grabbing the microphone on his right, he pressed the button and gave the signal. "Everyone to your posts, attack with everything and obliterate the village." At this command, every firebender at every ship came up deck and prepared to launch an all-out attack as they prepared the boulders covered in oil on the catapults and ignited them with fire, simultaneously catapulting the ignited boulders towards the village. The villagers saw the rest of the ships began to showering them with flaming boulders, making them cringe in fear, but Naruto just simply looked up into the sky and saw the incoming boulders. He slowly brought his hand up and brought down fast to his stomach, smacking it hard, causing Naruto to open his mouth and shot compressed air bullets at the flaming boulder, demolishing it in mid-air as they made impact and continued to shoot the air bullets for a while till he saw they were launching more and more boulders at them. "Damn it! They sure are becoming a pain in the ass," thought Naruto as he ceased smacking his abdomen and jumped up front in a twisting motion with both his hands forward clapped together, launching a powerful gale into the sky, tearing to pieces any boulder that was caught in its path. But some still managed to pass through as they were still heading towards the village. Wasting no time, Naruto dispersed the gale and reached into the snowed ground with his palms and brought his hands up as he crossed them in the air with his palms still open, bending the water and snow to hover above them. covering the entire village in a bigger dome made of crystal ice, and concentrated in managing to maintain it together as the boulders impacted it with only managing to crack it on a few parts of the dome. The villagers were now flabbergasted as this man not only did know fire bending, he also knows air bending and water bending. Hope slowly beginning to fill within them as they began to believe him to be the true Avatar instead of that kid that came to their village, but some were still skeptical about it. But I thought only the Avatar was the only one capable to mastering all four elements, muttered the same young girl that accused Naruto of being a fire bender as she saw him bend the water above the village and covering them with a giant dome. Child, the young girl turned back to look at Gran, who hadn't taken her sights off the young man. He can bend all four elements as well, for he is the Avatar as well, clarified the elder as the girl gained a look of shock on her face as she turned her attention back at Naruto. The helmsman that had ordered the attack against the village shook in disbelief as he saw the same man that destroyed the two fleets was now destroying some of the boulders with air balls, only for him to order everyone to launch a massive attack, believing that man could not destroy all of them at once. But he was proven wrong when he saw the man jump with his hands extended forward and sending a massive gust of wind at the boulders, demolishing most of them but with some ignited boulders still headed towards their target. Now let's see you block those in time, sneered the man in his mind, believing the blonde had no chance to save the village in time, only to have his eyes widen even further as a giant dome of ice rose over the village and protected from the rest of their attacks. Impossible, thought the helmsman in as he now shook in fear, not knowing how close they were to awakening the sleeping dragon within. I'm growing tired of these bastards, muttered Naruto annoyed. While still holding the dome in place, Naruto quickly kneeled down and twisted his upper body to the left while moving his arms in a circle upward, maintaining his hands upward as he stood up again with his left leg slightly forward while putting some of his weight on his right. The dome began to dissolve as it slowly uncovered the village and moved forward, standing as a 50 feet tall tidal wave in front of the village, and slowly, Naruto then brought both his hands to each side while barely lifting them up with his hands opened. And his left leg up with the tip of his toes barely touching the ground while still raising his arms up as it caused the tidal wave to grow taller and wider till it finally stood 60 feet tall. Slowly bringing his elbows down close to his abdomen, with his palms facing forward as he took a deep breath. Till he pushed forward as he sent both his arms out and leaned his body's weight on his left leg while exhaling his breath. "H!" shouted Naruto as he pushed the tidal wave, sending it straight at the rest of the fleet's direction, causing a giant roar as the water rushed forward as it crashed on the icebergs along the way. The messenger that was in the BEE pit with the helmsman quickly wrote down everything that happened and rushed towards the messenger eagle that nested on its cage near the door, causing the bird to squeak in pain as the messenger grabbed it roughly. Attaching the note onto its leg, the man ran to window and let the bird fly back towards their naval base, while the helmsman watched helplessly as the massive tidal wave came at them, crushing the ice that stood in its way as it came forward at them, engulfing the first few ships as it tore them up in its waters. "Spirits, what have we unleashed?" whispered the helmsman till the wave had finally hit and crushed his ship as it was being sent at the depths of the ocean. While still holding his stance, Naruto just stood there as he watched the wave kept going and going as it slowly began to die down till it finally dispersed into the water, and slowly he slipped out his stance while his tattoos began to stop their crimson glow till they completely disappeared from his body while the villagers just kept staring in awe at the power he displayed. The kids being the first to get out of the surprised expressions as they ran out of their parents' arms towards Naruto, clamping their tiny arms onto his legs as they cheered him. "That was cool. Do it again. You're awesome." Naruto just chuckled as he looked down at the group of children that surrounded him, placing his hand on top of the little girl's head that was clinching on his leg and simply ruffled her hair. The little girl looked up with small fear still being in her eyes. "Are the bad people gone now?" Naruto kneeled in front of her with his hand till on top of her head and smiled softly, "Yes, little one, the bad people will no longer disturb you." If this a small fraction of his power, then I can see how he single-handedly ended the wars and brought peace to the lands, thought Gran as she watched the destruction left by the Avatar, but turning back towards Naruto, she couldn't help but smile as she watched him interact kindly with the children. And I can see why peace lasted long under his reign. Suddenly Naruto gained a serious look in his eyes, and quickly stood up while turning. "I see you managed to survive," said the blonde Avatar as he glared at the captain, who was struggling as he used a bar of wood as a crutch to stand, scaring the villagers as he bended fire on his fist. "I suggest you surrender and I assure you, no harm will befall you," said Naruto calmly while still maintaining his guard, but it only infatuated the crippled captain even further in rage. "I will not surrender to a coward that disappeared for over a century instead of dying along with every freaking air nomad," shouted the captain in anger as he beeped his hand back, causing Naruto to narrow his eyes at this revelation, but still couldn't feel bothered when he said he had disappeared for over a century. "Have I really been frozen for that long?" pondered Naruto in his mind, but could not think about it much, for he saw the captain about to launch an attack and the blonde suddenly disappeared out of thin air, surprising everyone as he reappeared in front of the captain with his hand grasping his skull, and used his leg to sweep the captain's leg from behind and pushed him down to the ground, raising his right hand lightly up as he froze the firebender's hands to the ground. The captain continued to struggle to break free, but Naruto kept a strong grip on his skull. "Now let's see what has happened during this past century," muttered Naruto as he closed his eyes and his tattoos began to glow softly along with the captain's eyes as he finally stopped struggling. Inside his mind, Naruto was able to see every atrocity the captain made in the name of the Fire Nation, burning villages to the ground as he and his army passed through the lands, killing without mercy those who had surrendered willingly, ruling over conquering villages with an iron fist as he taxed them severely, separating families and causing orphans. But one memory that sickened him the most was when he saw the memory of a young pregnant teen being burnt alive by the captain, giving her a slowly and painful. He also saw the lecture as to how Fire Lord Sozin exterminated the Air Nation without warning by killing men, women and children, old and young, and him watching with anticipation at the lesson. At each passing memory, he could hear the screams of despair of each person he came across, he could hear the pleas of mercy, but arrogantly, he slaughtered them without a thought. He could hear the cries of children as they cried for their dead parents to get up, not to leave them, but stayed unresponsive. With each vision that flashed through his mind, it made him get angrier and angrier by the minute, as his tattoos were now fully glowing, his canine teeth had now become fangs and his fingernails had grown into claws, and his eyes snapped open, glowing crimson as he glared into the eyes of the captain. The captain getting scared for his life as he now had regained control of his body and could feel the anger raging within, he pleaded to Naruto, "I promise to repent for my crimes, but please spare me." But only managed to anger the blonde even further. "You dare ask for mercy when you gave your enemies none after they had surrendered?" shouted an enraged and livid Naruto at the man, beginning to squeeze the man's skull as you could hear the bone beginning to crack. "I will give you the same mercy you delivered to those you slaughter." And slowly white flames began to erupt from his body, scorching the captain's face slowly as smoke began to pour between Naruto's fingers, that is until Naruto unleashed the raging inferno, setting the captain aflame as he began to scream on top of his lungs, for he could not stand the pain of his limbs being burnt. But Naruto simply unleashed more fire, causing the villagers to step back as they tried to cover themselves from the inferno, until the captain was turned to ash. With his screams echoing throughout the village with the smell of burnt flesh flowing through the air, while Naruto just stayed kneeled with his hand still extended forward with the fire still licking his body, while he was in a trance. However, unknown to the villagers, an astral form of a dragon appeared from underneath the ground as it used its claws to grasp onto his shoulders and pulled out Naruto's spirit out of his body as they flew into the distance. "What the hell?" demanded Naruto as he looked around till he finally looked down and saw his physical body being left behind, and looked up to see a dragon had a hold of him as they continued to fly away. "Let me go, you oversized lizard!" shouted Naruto as he struggled to break free, but the dragon didn't budge as it kept flying on top of a mountain, its peak residing high in the skies where the sun gave an orange glow. Once the dragon reached the top of the mountain, the dragon released Naruto not so gracefully a few feet off the ground, but the blonde twisted his body in mid-air and managed to land on his feet while glaring at the dragon that had landed on top of a hill, passively staring down at Naruto. "It's a pleasure to finally meet the avatar that brought bending to the world through his 4 students." Naruto turned around to see the person that had spoken, but found that said person wasn't alone, for he had 3 more companions with him, each of them staring down at him indifferently as they stood on the edge of the hill. Who are you? Why was I brought here? And where in the hell is here? Demanded Naruto as he got in his earth-bending stance, but to his shock he found that he could not use bending as he tried to bend the earth to grasp the 4 intruders that were in front of him. Relax, young one, we are not your enemies, stated an old man wearing robes that were red with black lining. He had arm bands made of some blue fabric and had a long beard of white with his hair being white as well, with some sort of crown thereon his head. His face was showing a good deal of old age, but his eyes were what made him stop, amber eyes that were hardened by battle experience, further telling the former shinobi that this man wasn't someone to be trifled with when angered, despite his kind and calm demeanor. And as to who am I, I'm Avatar Roku, the predecessor of the previous reincarnated avatar, and the rest of my companions are the previous avatars before me. This is Avatar Kyoshi, the old man now known as Roku signaled with has to a fairly tall woman with long brown hair that was tied at the end of her hair, wearing a long green kimono with a grass green shirt above the kimono, and a light green vest on top with combat boots and matching color gloves. White war paint adorned her face with red paint on top of her eyebrows and a mock crown on her head, simply nodded her head at him in acknowledgement, and this is Avatar Kuruk. Then a bearded man wearing the traditional water tribe clothing wearing the hide of a sea lion stepped forward, he too nodded his head at the blonde, and lastly. This is Avatar Yongchen, a fairly good-looking woman with a blue arrow on her forehead, wearing air nomad robes with a wooden necklace around her neck, simply bowed in respect at the avatar in front of her. We, and every reincarnated avatar before us have maintained the balance between the 4 nations since your absence and your son. The first avatar, took the mantle of Keeper of Balance more than 10,000 years ago, said Avatar Roku to Naruto who just stood dumbfounded on his spot. 10,000 years ago. Exclaimed the blonde as he fell on his knees and Roku just nodded his head sadly in confirmation. 1010 was the only name that kept repeating on his mind. For the thought of his wife living while believing that her husband was dead and the pain she must have felt every day of her life as she raised their son by herself, and that ate him from the inside out, and the hopes of seeing her were just thrown out the window along with chances of being there for his son. And watch him as he grows to become an adult, shattering his will as his eyes lost their spark for life. Yongchen felt saddened as she saw the man before her become nothing but a shell and jumped down and landed softly next to Naruto, kneeling in front of him and gently cupped his cheeks in her hands, making him look up into her eyes. Father, started the airbender, causing Naruto to widen his eyes in mild surprise. Don't blame yourself for what happened long ago, you did your duty knowing the risks and consequences in order to protect those you held dear in your heart, and yes, you're our father, for we are reincarnations of your son, Raisin, since we are part of the cycle that began when Raisin awoke in the avatar state at birth. Yongchen said softly to Naruto as she slowly embraced him. I hate to interrupt and be the bearer of bad news, Avatar Kuruk suddenly said as he landed a few feet away from the two, with Kyoshi and Roku in tow. But we seek your help once again in order to stop the war that has been destroying this world, said Kyoshi as she walked towards the blonde who still hadn't moved a muscle, causing Kyoshi to give a disgusted look towards him. If you truly are the avatar of 4 dragons, then I'm truly not impressed, ranted the former avatar from the Earth Nation. Shocking the rest of the group, I used to hear tales of how you single-handedly stopped a raging war that had engulfed the lands in a river of blood many centuries ago by fighting and killing an immortal that had the abilities to control the powerful of demons. But I fear the tales were exaggerated if you are nothing but a fucking coward that hid himself in a pillar of ice. Kyoshi finished her rant as she glared at Naruto. Yongchen was about to protest at Kyoshi's words, but a hand on her shoulder suddenly stopped her and turned towards Naruto as he softly pushed her away. Once the air nomad was at a small distance away from him, without warning, launched himself at Kyoshi with blinding speed, shocking her as he grabbed her by the throat and slammed her against the stone wall and lifted her up with one hand only. Looking directly at his eyes, the former avatar felt a small tinge of fear as he glared at her with murderous intent. I don't need a fucking lecture from someone who doesn't understand the turmoil I'm going through, so I would watch out with what I say if I were you, threatened Naruto coldly as he glared at her with fury. Roku slowly walked beside Naruto and gently placed a hand on the blonde's shoulder. She doesn't mean what she said, but we have more urgent things to worry about. Naruto kept glaring at Kyoshi before abruptly letting her go and turned towards Roku, why is there war after many years when I eradicated the thoughts of war? I thought the Avatar was supposed to maintain the balance between the nations, where was he or she when the first risings of war commenced? Said the blonde as blue glared into amber eyes, tell me everything. Sighing, Roku waved his hand lazily and the scenery began to change. A younger yet aged Roku arguing with the Fire Lord of that time about the Fire Nation invading and colonizing lands and villages from other nations and ordering him to seize at once. Watching from afar, Roku and Naruto watched as everything took place. Back then, Fire Lord Sozin had planned a massive invasion over the rest nations in secret and first approached me about it after I had come back home from my training trip to master the rest of the elements. But I refused to be part of his plan as it would disturb the balance of the world, and that left a bitter pill for Sozin to swallow, but still, Sozin went on with his plan of world domination. Later years, I confronted him to stop at once, but sadly, it ended in confrontation with the promise of ending his life, something I regret severely for I later found out that Sozin had been long dead, stated Roku as he slowly closed his eyes and Naruto just looked at Roku with surprise. Dead? But I see him standing there, how he can be dead unless asked Naruto till realization slowly began to sip in his mind, an illusion and answer to which the former reincarnation nodded his head, and again waved his hand, changing the scenery once again to that of a volcano in the background. Standing a few feet away from Roku as he laid on the ground with black fire burning on his chest with the Fire Lord having his fist shot out with black flames dancing around it, shocking the blonde much. Black flames. But there was only one Uchiha that had such a degree of control over the black flames of hell, thought the Crimson Avatar while he continued to watch with anticipation as Roku looked at the Fire Lord in shock, and then it happened, shocking Naruto even further as Sozin's appearance began to disperse. Revealing a person he thought to be long dead stood there, with his raven hair flowing in the wind, red eyes with tomos around the iris glaring at Roku. Sasuke muttered Naruto. I had hoped on your return, that you would not make the same foolish mistake your friend made, but yet again, I was proved wrong as you opposed me, defeating me without effort despite my power, but that was my mistake since I underestimated you for you're not just the Avatar, but a direct descendant of him and his bastard offspring as well. Finished the raven-haired man with a snarl as he glared hatefully at Roku, but with you gone, all my plans are going to be realized. I have a vision for the future, Roku, with me being its sole ruler. Finished the raven-haired impostor as his dragon landed behind him, waiting for his master to mount him. Naruto just kept watching till Sasuke mounted his dragon and flew away into the distance, and then everything disintegrated as it went back to normal as they stood again at the same rocky terrain. I take it that you know the man that started the war. It was more of a statement than a question, a statement that Naruto nodded his head slowly. Yes I do, he threatened to engulf the lands into another sea of blood in order to quench his thirst for power and revenge, said Naruto as he slowly closed his eyes, taking a pause before continuing his story, but I assume that he died long ago. But as you can see, he is very much alive and ruling over the Fire Nation while he is raging war for the past century and is nearing victory, said Roku as he stared at Naruto seriously, and as for why the Avatar did nothing, only he can answer you, finished Roku, with the rest of the previous avatars standing behind him. And the reigning avatar doesn't stand a chance against him. Only you have the power to stop him and end this bloody war, just as you did many years ago, said Yangchen as she stepped forward. So we ask of you, Avatar of 4 dragons, will you lend us your power once again, pleaded Avatar Kurek. Naruto just stood there quietly, not believing that Sasuke was still alive, slowly opened his eyes and turned towards the 4 precious avatars with a stony expression. I'll help you, was his answer. Nodding his thanks, Roku signaled for his trusted dragon to come forth, and did so as the dragon landed next to Roku. Fong will return you to your body in order to return to the world of the living. Just simply nodding his head walked towards the dragon, causing Roku to worry for he could feel the depression growing within him as he watched Naruto carefully mounting the dragon. Avatar Naruto, the blonde turned back at Roku, don't let the loss of your family cloud your judgment and cause your demise, wisely advised the Avatar, but the blonde just simply turned around. Once he felt comfortable sitting on the dragon's back, he gently petted the dragon and it took off into the air. Back at the village of the Southern Water Tribe, the villagers still maintained their distance from the blonde teen as the fire had not yet receded as it still danced around him, not wanting to be burnt to ash just like the captain of navy. However, the same little girl that was sad over Aang's departure wiggled out of her mom's arms with ease as she was preoccupied watching the fire, scaring her as she saw her daughter head straight into the fire. "Shauna!" shouted the mother, but to only gasp in shock as the girl entered the flames and wasn't burnt at all. The little girl kept walking towards Naruto till she stood in front of his kneeling form with his arms still stretched out. Curious and worried, the little girl approached him and gently placed her tiny hands on his arm and began to shake him, as if trying to wake him up. "Mister, can you hear me? Please wake up," said the little girl as she didn't notice the same dragon that took Naruto dive from above towards the ground with the blonde clashing with his own body as his spirit was put back on his body. Once back on his body, the blonde avatar took a deep breath and exhaled the air he consumed, extinguishing the white flames completely while his markings stopped their glow and receded back into nothingness. Opening his eyes, Naruto noticed the little girl from before and gave her a small smile before he stood up and turned towards the villagers and walked towards their direction with his sights set on Kanna till he finally stood almost in front of her. "Elder, I need you to tell where the current is Avatar headed towards," said Naruto to Gran while she simply nodded her head. "He is heading up north, where our sister tribe resides in order to learn and master waterbending," she informed him, and Naruto just simply bowed in respect. "I thank you, Elder," Naruto said politely before he turned back towards the entrance of the village and began to head course towards the North Pole. "Wait," Gran called out, causing the blonde to look back at her, "let us at least repay you for saving us by helping you prepare for your journey. It is a long road ahead of you and you need at least a canoe in order to make across this cold waters." Smiling a bit, he accepted and walked back towards the village to rest up for the day and prepares to leave the next day. The following day, Naruto now stood again at the edge of the ice with a canoe roped to the ground, carrying supplies for his journey, as he stared at the group of villagers that had come to see his departure with Kanna stepping forward with a few more extra items at hand. "Here, you will need this," she said as she handed him a small bundle to him. "It contains a map of the landscape of the 4 nations and the location of the Northern Water Tribe, and a letter to my grandchildren with a new set of clothing," she explained. Naruto just nodded his head in gratitude, and looked at the rest of the people. "I'm forever indebted to your gratitude. I promise to repay y'all somehow once the war is over," he finished saying before he swiftly jumped into the canoe without rocking it much and placed the small bundle next to the supplies and untied the canoe as he was getting ready to sail, but not before approached him once again. "Avatar, I have one favor to ask of you," the elder said to him. "Please, watch over my grandchildren when you find them. They're all that I've left of my daughter and I can't bear the thought of losing them," pleaded Katara's grandmother with small tears forming in her eyes. Naruto just simply reached with both his arms and gently wrapped them around her, whispering in her ear, "I promise to take good care of them Gran, it's a promise of a lifetime," and with that he let go of her and used his foot to push himself offshore, waving goodbye to the villagers as he drifted away. Once he was at a good distance away, Naruto turned towards the horizon and kneeled down with his arms stretched out with open palms till he stood up and brought his arms forward, bending the water to rise as a small tidal wave for him to be pushed at high speeds towards Earth Kingdom territory. Watching from a distance, Gran saw the Crimson Avatar get further and further away, hope dwelling in her heart with a certain thought in her mind. "It is not place to have told you, but yours and my granddaughter's destinies were intertwined long before you had awakened. With each other, both of you will be able to heal and fill the holes you both hold inside your hearts in order to find happiness," thought Kanna as she closed her eyes as she turned back to walk back inside the village with the rest of her people, awaiting for the day that the war would over. It had been almost 4 weeks since the Avatar and his friends had left the southern tribe and made their journey towards the North Pole, but not before making a few pit stops along the way. Looking for a short break from their travels, their first stop was the Earth Kingdom's Kyoshi Island, where Aang brings the gang to the island on order to ride Elephant Koi, large fish who inhabits the surrounding waters, without realizing that there was a bigger fish under the sea prowling at its prey, as it tried to make a meal out of Aang. But he managed to escape without harm. Before they were able to leave, the gang was captured by a group of female warriors who live on the island. Believing that they were Fire Nation spies, Aang was able to convince them to trust him by using air bending, for Kyoshi was a past avatar and he is the current avatar. In the meanwhile, Saka was taught a lesson in humility and equality by the Kyoshi warrior Suki, who trains him after giving him a humiliating defeat and manages to change his sexist attitude while Aang lets the village's reverence of him go to his head. Unfortunately, Zuko hears the rumors of the Avatar being on Kyoshi Island and catches up to them, causing mayhem as the scarred fire prince burns, causing Aang to feel guilty as he saw the damage that was done to the village until the group draws him off the island. After they left the island of Kyoshi, the group's next stop on their trip around the world was the Earth Kingdom city of Omashu. There, Aang, disguised as an old man, shows Katara and Sokka the Omashu chute mail delivery system, which he and his friend Bumi used to ride for fun 100 years ago. The trio gives the chutes a try but runs into trouble after it destroys a cabbage merchant's cart. Put in front of the crazy king of the city, the gang is given a feast, to which the king suspects that Aang is the Avatar and throws him a piece of chicken to which Aang holds in mid-air using his bending skills. The old king puts him through 3 deadly challenges to test his skills, each hidden with a secret meaning, while holding his friends captive. After challenging the king and defeating him as the final challenge, Aang is forced to figure out the king's name, and based on the nature of the challenges, he realizes that the king is his old friend Bumi. Bumi informs Aang of what his task as the current avatar entails and that hopefully, he would think like a mad genius in order to prevail on the hardships ahead of him. Meanwhile, at the naval port occupied by the Fire Nation, General Zhao stood looking out the window of his office, watching the sunset as it illuminated the sea, awaiting for the return of the fleet he had sent out to fetch the Avatar, but the problem was that they had left over 2 weeks ago, and no report hadn't come in, and it began to irritate him to no end as a scowl appeared in his face. "Where the hell are those imbeciles?" growled the general in displeasure, but then he turned towards his door frame as the sound of running footsteps got closer till a soldier appeared through the door, gasping for air as he used the door frame for support while he held a scroll in his hand. "General Zhao!" gasped the soldier as he saluted his higher in command, "Sir. A messenger hawk just arrived, with grave news concerning the fleet." "And what news could it be besides they might have already captured the Avatar and be heading back to base," said the commander as he went back to admiring the sunset. "Commander Zhao, it's worse than that," said the nameless soldier, "the entire fleet was decimated by one man." "What?" shouted Zhao as he turned back in a snap and waltzed towards the soldier to snatch away the message from his hands and began to read what the letter contained. "General Zhao. By the time you get this message, our fleet would be no more. We found him. We found the Avatar. But dangerous he is, for he annihilated the captain's crew of 2 ships. I fear that we may have just signed the Fire Nation's death warrant. Mercilessly he is destroying the rest of the ships as I write this. We have awakened the sleeping dragon. Please inform the Fire Lord of this threat." Growling in anger, Zhao gripped the paper till it crumbled in his hands, until he noticed that there was a second page on the back of the message. Separating both papers, he took notice that the second page was a drawing of someone, golden spiked-haired, 3 lines on each cheek with red eyes. "So this is the Avatar," thought the general as he glared at the drawing. Turning his attention back towards the soldier that brought him the letter, he barked his order. "I want you to post this flyer all over the nations. I want the Avatar to be found and captured, dead or alive," he said as he slammed the drawing in his desk, leaving it laying there, and the drawing slowly begins to become transparent, as it revealed the man of the picture at sea. The blonde Avatar could be seen on his raft, lying on his back lazily as he just dozed under the sun, letting the sea drift him off into who knows where. It has been a week since he left the Southern Water Tribe village, and so far, he didn't know where to begin looking for. The lands had changed so much that he no longer recognized the land terrains from his time. "Damn it, I should have known not to leave in haste," thought the blonde as he sat up half sleepy. "I don't even know how her grandchildren or the Avatar looks like for that matter. Hell, I don't know where they went to begin with or as to where the hell I'm, man, what a drag," thought Naruto as he ran his hand through his hair in mild frustration till turned towards his left and saw the untouched bundle that the village elder had given him before he left. I had forgotten all about this, muttered the blonde as he reached for the package and placed it on top of his crossed legs, unwrapping it as it revealed 2 scrolls, one big and one small. Some clothing, a map and small supply of food. Curious, reached and grabbed the scroll first as he unrolled it, revealing a painting of 2 teens, one being a dark-skinned girl, blue eyes, and dark brown hair. Some of her hair was pulled into a bun, as the rest was braided into a ponytail beneath it, while she held a soft smile on her face with her hands held together in front of her waist. Causing the blonde's heart to slightly ache, for somehow the girl reminded him somewhat of his long-deceased wife. Then he noticed she was standing next to an equally dark-skinned young man that held a small arrogant smirk with his arms crossed in front of his chest. Also adorning blue eyes but a shaved head save for a strip of brown hair pulled back in a small ponytail that took shape of a small pineapple, causing Naruto to remember his lazy friend with a sad smile on his face before he shook his head side to side, regaining back his focus back on his objective. So they must be her grandchildren, mused Naruto as he still looked at the painting. At least now I know how they look, and if I find them, I find the avatar. Rolling the painting back into the scroll, Naruto then picked up the smaller scroll, only to find that it was addressed to her grandchildren. Shrugging it off, he turned his attention to the set of clothing that was folded with a small note attached to it. Picking it up, he began to read its contents. Avatar Namikaze. As a token of our gratitude, we knitted you a new set of clothes. To replace the tattered clothes you are wearing. Gran. Rereading the note twice, he looked at the black pile set of clothing that was still left untouched. Reaching for the piece of clothing as he stood up, he held it in front of him, revealing to be a black sleeveless vest with a turtleneck, high enough to cover the lower part of the face. And it was adorning green outlines around the edges of the shoulder sleeves and turtleneck. Putting the vest down, he reached for the second piece of clothing, revealing to be a set of black kung fu pants with a long yellow sash to go around the waist, and a pair of kung fu shoes. A/N. No orange. Muttered the blonde, then he looked down at his own clothing, or what was left of it, all tattered and torn, ready to fall apart. I guess I can't complain if they went through the trouble making this for me, and the style does look cool, smirked Naruto as he slowly put on the vest and began to change his clothing. Fully standing, Naruto walked towards the edge of the raft and looked at his reflection by using the water as a mirror, admiring how good the outfit fit him, and the sash wrapped around his waist, leaving some of it hanging over his lap. Doing a backflip, he landed in the middle of the raft and did some Hungar and Tai Chi forms, feeling comfortable as to how loose the outfit felt. They did a good job with this. I barely feel any restrictions on, yet it feels a little tight, muttered the blonde as he walked to where the forearms bracers were and lifted them up, strapping them on his wrist. But I feel like I'm missing something, thought the blonde till a light bulb lit up while he was massaging his wrist. I know, I'm missing a hat, but I'll worry about that later since I'm close to shore. And indeed he was close to shore as he saw a port not far from him, but decided to land ashore on the furthest port from the village. Once the raft reached the wooden platform, the blonde used a rope to tie down his raft so it wouldn't drift away. Once making sure his raft was tightly secure, Naruto went to grab his bag and placed over his shoulder. Once making sure he wasn't leaving anything behind, he walked off his raft and began to make way towards town. Looking around, he noticed that mostly thieves, mercenaries and pirates were owners of the shops around here, and had to admit, they did have some good quality items, bringing a thought to his mind. If I want to keep a low profile, I must not use my bending, especially fire bending, since that would get me in shit load of trouble in the other nations thanks to this fucking war, pondered the blonde as he softly stroked his chin while he continued to walk down the streets, but that would leave me with taijutsu only. And that would not help much if I'm outnumbered while they are carrying weapons. Then he looked at some of the shops that had weapons displayed out in the open and made his way towards one of the shops as he walked inside. Once inside, he went straight at the wall that held the swords, pising them till his eyes caught sight of a certain blade. A longer than normal katana, whose blade was on the opposite side of the blade, while the dull part was where the blade it should be, a ray skin handle with dual bamboo pegs holding the handle together. On the blade, there were some words engraved. Thou shalt not be greedy, thou shalt not be afraid. Asakabato. This blade looks perfect. I don't have to worry about holding back, and by adding my wind affinity, I can make the dull part sharp when needed, thought Naruto as he kept staring at the blade while he reached out for it. But once his hand was a couple of centimeters away, he could not shake off the feeling of something ominous coming from the blade. What the? Hey young lad, a gruff voice snapped him out of his thoughts as he looked towards the source of the voice, finding that it was an old weaponsmith that stood behind the counter had gained his attention. If I were you, I would not dare to purchase that blade, my boy, said the old man grimly. Raising an eyebrow, he walked towards the counter to talk to the old man. Let me guess, it's a cursed sword, correct? Raising his eyebrows in mild surprise, you knew? No, but I could feel something off coming from the blade, replied the blonde as he turned back looking at the blades. Nodding his head, the old took a sigh as he told about the blades. According to the tales, since the time of Qin the Great, every famous swordsman that used that reversed sword always ended up dead, said the old smith as he took out a pipe and inserted some tobacco in it before lighting a match, puffing from the tip to inhale the smoke. And to this date, there has been no one in this world who could wield it, finished the old man, exhaling the smoke from his lungs. That's interesting, muttered Naruto before he turned to the old man with a grin. I'll take it, shocking the old as he dropped the pipe from his mouth. Are you nuts? Haven't you listened to a word I have said? I can't sell them to you, for if you died then it would be my fault. Besides, you cannot kill anyone with that. Shouted the old geezer in disbelief as he watched the stupid blonde walk back towards the sword and dropped his bag. Reaching for the reverse blade as he grasped it with his hand, the lunatic turned back at the old man again with the same grin. How about a deal then? Challenged the blonde. Let's try to see what is better between my luck and their curse, and chunked into the air, shocking the old man even more. If I lose, my destiny will end here, said Naruto with finality as he stretched both his arms out with his eyes closed. What are you doing? Do you want to lose your arm? Shouted the old man with fear evident for the youngster. That sword is very sharp even if it's a reverse blade. And in slow motion, the Sakabato came down as gravity took its course, getting closer towards the arm of the blonde avatar, but to the shocking surprise of the shop owner, the blade just danced around his arms without harming him or leaving a scratch on him, embedding itself into the wooden floor. After a long period of silence, Naruto just grinned. I'll take it, causing the old man to fall onto the ground in shock, and watched as how the blonde just placed the blade into his bag, and was about to lift his bag till the old man got out of his stupor. Wait! Yelled the shop owner, gaining Naruto's full attention as he watched the owner go into the back, searching for something as he could hear the sounds of items being moved around, and after a few minutes later, he saw the old man walk out with a regular black sheath, and he just stared back confusedly. What is this? Asked Naruto. I want you to have it, that way you don't have to worry about stabbing yourself while carrying the blade on your bag, explained the man. Not only that, the merchant grabs the sheath and taps it against the wooden floor, causing a loud tapping noise when hitting the floor, surprising Naruto lightly. The sheath is made of a special metal that's light but hard as a diamond, perfect for use in case you lose or get the sword taken away to defend against bandits. Are you sure? Asked Naruto, unsure, but the old man just simply nodded his head. I can't explain it, but you, my boy, I feel that you're gonna need them in the coming future, said the old geezer. Not sure as to what to say, Naruto just politely bowed in gratefulness and gave his thanks. He grabbed the sheath and placed the sword inside, making an audible click when placed. Placing the sword on his side under his sash, he picked up his bag and walked out of the store. Once outside, the blonde continued his merry way through town as he walked down the streets of the market, till he heard the whispers of a small group of traders while they were gathered around next to a stall that held cabbages. Curious as to what they were talking about, he walked towards them to get a better hearing. Did you hear about the village that is being occupied by the Fire Nation? Said one of the merchants. Another one. No place is safe from those monsters, cried out cabbage stand owner. That's not even the worst part. I hear that they took every earthbender that resided in the village and no one knows where they were taken. Some believe that were killed off to stop the uprising of revolt against them, informs the same merchant, causing most of them to lower their heads in hopelessness. But there's still hope, right? I mean, the Avatar has come back, said another merchant with hope laced on his voice. The Avatar? Humph, scoffed an old merchant while he held a smoking pipe in his hand, it's the Avatar's fault to begin with, if he hadn't disappeared 100 years ago and stopped this war from happening, we wouldn't be in this damned mess to begin with. Excuse me gentlemen, interrupted Naruto as he chose to step in, catching their attention as they turned towards him, but I was wondering if you point out where this village is located at? And what business do you have there, boy? Asked the old man as he took a puff from his pipe, blowing some smoke at Naruto's face. Fucking bastard, thought Naruto as he swatted away the smoke, I'm just a wanderer that raids Fire Nation camps to help others, sir. So you're just a foolish daredevil, aren't you lad? Replied the old man who shrugged his shoulders, oh well, it's your funeral, son. Pulling out a map from under his coat, he spread it out in front of Naruto, pointing out where they were located. The trading village is located here, this is where we are located. Then pointing his finger down south from where he first pointed at, the village that is being occupied by fire benders is located south of here, to a small dot that was close to the ocean. If you run fast you'll at the village in 3 days' time, laddie. Pulling out his own map, Naruto scribed down the points where old chain smoker pointed at and put it away once he was finished. Turning to the old man, Naruto simply bowed in gratitude, I appreciate your help, sir. Watch out! A voice shot out suddenly out of nowhere, causing Naruto and the merchants to look back down the road, only to find 3 kids, 2 boys, 1 bald kid with a blue arrow and dark-skinned teen with blue eyes with a young girl equally as dark skin with same shade of blue eyes. With a flying lemur running straight at them while being chased by some men. The merchant sidestepped to the sides as the boys and the girl ran around the cabbage cart, while the bald kid just jumped through the small space of the cart and turned twirling his staff till he swatted it, causing a gust of wind to send the cart back crashing at the men that were chasing them. My cabbages! Shouted the cabbage merchant, this place is worse than Omashu. That's them! Thought Naruto in surprise as he saw them running away and turning at a corner, those are the kids from the painting. At this realization, the blonde quickly dashes after them by jumping to the roofs and ran in hopes of catching up to them before those men they were being chased by did first. Try to find them, he did, but just as easily, he lost them till he heard a shout and ran towards where it came, and landed on the roof as he stood at the edge, only to find the girl being held hostage by a guy holding a knife at her neck while the boys looked ready to surrender. Not letting it stand by, Naruto jumped onto the scene just as he landed between them. Aang, Saka and Katara kept running from the pirates as they tried to lose them by outmaneuvering them through the trading market, but persistent they were as a few were still hot on their tail. Just wait till we catch the lot of you runts. Thieves! You won't get away. Who are you calling a thief, you thief? Shouted Saka back as he kept on running, all of this for a stupid water scroll. Shut up and keep running. Shouted Aang as he still maintained haste with Katara following in tow. Looking ahead of the streets, Aang saw another corner to turn at and to hopefully loose them once and for all. Turning sharply, almost skidding, Aang ran down the alley with Saka and Katara following suit, but unfortunately, Aang didn't count on the alley being a dead end as he and his group came to a sudden halt. It's a dead end! Exclaimed Katara in panic. Let's turn back, said Saka as he turned backwards, but again, came A to stop when the pirates finally had caught to them, chuckling as they entrapped them inside the alley. Heh heh, nowhere to run now runts, sneered the pirate with long black hair with a light green bandana around his head. Aang jumped in front of his friends with his staff being held in a defensive position, ready to use his air bending to get out of this mess. Too bad they didn't notice one of the pirates that was sneaking behind them from the rooftop as he landed quietly and took Katara hostage, causing her to shout in surprise. Causing Aang and Sokka to look back, as she was being held close as he held a knife at her neck, with the intent of slicing it open. Katara! Shouted Sokka frantically, pulling out his boomerang ready to throw it at him while Aang was ready to spring into action, but stopped at once when they saw a small trickle of blood running down her neck as the pirate had pressed the blade a little harder against her skin, slightly cutting it open. I wouldn't try anything if I were you boys, warned the pirate. Now, drop your weapons and surrender peacefully, and the girl won't suffer a painful end, offered the pirate, causing both boys to grit their teeth in anger, but couldn't do anything about it for they would hurt Katara. Having no other alternative, both of them were about to announce their surrender till a black blur landed in front of them, revealing to be kneeling man with gold hair holding a traveling bag over his shoulder with a sword strapped on his side, wearing an black sleeveless vest with color-matching pants. Glaring dangerously at the pirate as he stood up. "I suggest that you let her go and walk away while you and your comrades are still able to walk," warned the stranger as he softly let his bag drop beside him and pulled out his sword, embedding it on the ground. "Don't interfere, this does not concern you," retorted the pirate, but the blonde just simply took a step forward, causing the pirate to get nervous as took a step backward with Katara in tow. "Stay where you are or the girl gets it." But it fell on deaf ears as Naruto took another step forward. Anxiety finally getting the best of him, the pirate twitched his arm, ready to slit her throat open just as Katara closed her eyes at the sudden twitch, but a twitch was all that Naruto needed as he blurred at the pirate, grabbing onto the pirate's hand with his elbow pointing upward while he held Katara by the waist with his other arm up close. Holding the limb tightly till the blonde just simply twisted his arm at a normal angle, breaking the elbow and fracturing the wrist at the same time, causing said pirate to scream in pain as he let go of Katara in order to hold his hand, but Naruto didn't let him do such as he pulled the injured pirate harshly towards him and with the same hand shot a rapid straight punch at the pirate's face, breaking his nose as he sent him crashing at the wall, where he slid down and landed with a thud, making everyone look wide-eyed at the display of skill. With her eyes still shut, Katara waited for death to claim her as the pirate was about to cut her throat open, but instead, she felt something snake around her waist gently carried with the sound of bones breaking just before she felt the blade being pulled away. Followed by a loud scream and again bones being broken till it finally stopped as it hit the wall. Slowly, she opened her eyes and she saw the man that intervened holding her closely with his fist shot out. Looking back as to where his fist was pointing at, she saw the pirate that held her hostage unconscious on the floor, bleeding from the nose with his arm being bent at unnatural angle. "Are you alright?" She heard him ask, and turned to look at him. Hard ocean blue eyes staring back her as she simply just nodded her head slowly. Shifting his attention from Katara, Naruto looked at Saka. "Oi. Baldly. Boomerang guy. Come over here." Hearing the nicknames the golden-haired stranger had given, both Aang and Saka snapped out of their stupor and rushed towards them, not wanting to anger him. Seeing that both were front and center, the blonde just simply handed Katara to them. "Stay here and watch over her, I'll take care of this mess," ordered Naruto as he walked past them and headed to the group of pirates that now had gotten out of their shock, glaring angrily at him. "I assume that your answer is the same as the one your unconscious friend gave me," he exclaimed, and his response was them running drawing their weapons. "Fella, I'll give you to the count of 3 for you to get lost," said the long-haired pirate, but Naruto just stood there, looking at the pirates passively. 1, 2, 3. And Naruto simply responded by throwing a punch at the pirate, giving him a black eye as he stumbled back towards his comrades half-conscious. One of the other pirates rushed at the blonde with his knives drawn, ready to slice the blonde as he thrust her forward, but Naruto just grabbed a hold of his hand and twisted far enough to shatter the bones and yanked the arm hard enough to dislocate the shoulder. Pushing the pirate away as he fell down to the ground clutching his arm in pain while another one rushed at him with his sword held high to slash him, but Naruto took a step forward as he intercepted using his bracer to block it. And sent a kick to his midsection hard enough to break some ribs and another one jumped from the side as he tried to land a punch, but Naruto caught the punch and shoved the arm back dislocating the shoulder, twisted the arm harshly causing the elbow to break, and flipped the man, causing him to land in front of Aang, Saka and Katara as they just watched how easily the stranger was defeating the pirates. "Unreal," whispered Saka in disbelief. A bald pirate tired to deliver a direct kick and Naruto raised his leg and redirect the kick towards the wall, getting it stuck as it allowed Naruto to deliver an axe kick to the knee, shattering the knee as the pirate screamed and was shoved head first to the wall by said blonde. Looking up, Naruto saw another pirate tried to attack him with an axe as he jumped off the roof, but Naruto met him head-on as he delivered a hard spinning kick at the man's collarbone, breaking it as he was sent crashing through the wall. One tried to sneak attack as he sent a punch and without turning, the blonde caught the punch with his left hand and twisted the wrist backward also shattering the bones and flipped him on his back as the pirate cried as he held his hand. One pirate actually managed to sneak behind him as he wrapped his arm around the blonde's neck, but the grip wasn't strong enough as Naruto just simply broke the hold and pulled the arm over his shoulder hard enough to yank the socket out of its place, and delivered a strong elbow strike at the man's ribs, sending him back onto the pile of trash, and turned around to deliver a hard right to another pirate that tried the same tactic, sending him crashing face first at the wooden wall, breaking it on impact. Naruto turned around again as he took a small step back and shot his arm forward straight, grabbing onto the shoulder of the attacking pirate, squeezing his hand hard enough to demolish the shoulder and threw the man to the side to intercept another knife strike from the same pirate from before that got hit in the face. But this time Naruto wasn't as kind, as the blonde simply delivered another hard punch to the face, breaking the nose and losing some of the man's teeth as he was sent back once again, but this time unconscious. Stepping sideways, Naruto managed to avoid a kick that was coming at him and grabbed onto the ankle with both hands, and twisted the ankle with both hands as it spun the man in mid-air till he landed on the floor screaming in pain while holding his broken ankle. Two pirates decided to attack at the same time as they rushed, but Naruto simply grabbed a hold to one of the arms and twisted it backward as it broke the elbow, but seeing the other pirate coming at him, he used the broken limb to block the punch, using his other hand to grab the arm. The blonde just tangled both arms as he twisted them. Sensing someone coming at him from his left, Naruto managed to raise his leg to deliver a strong kick to the oncoming pirate in the face, hard enough to knock him out as he pushed the pirates away towards the rest of their shipmates. "I suggest the rest of you take your wounded men and leave," warned the blonde with hard eyes, "or next time I won't be as kindly as to dislocate or break a few bones," and he reached for the handle of his sword, emphasizing his statement. Growing afraid at the blonde, the pirates gathered their injured crewmen and retreated with their tail between their legs, leaving the group alone in the alley as Aang and his friends let out a sigh of relief. Katara slowly approached the person in front of her, taking into the detail his appearance. Excuse me," said Katara softly, gaining the person's attention as he turned towards her, causing her to blush at how handsome the man looked, his well-outlined face, and his deep blue eyes. But as she looked deeper into his eyes, she saw an emotion she too was well familiar with, pain of loss, but she was snapped out of her stupor by Naruto. "What?" "I asked if you're okay, your cut is still bleeding," stated Naruto as he pointed at the light gash that was on her neck, covering it with her hand, and felt a warm liquid. Pulling her hand, she saw it was her own blood. "Allow me," Naruto said suddenly as he reached with his hand as it gave a greenish glow, but Saka intervened, not knowing what the intentions were. "Hey! What do you think you're doing?" demanded the overprotective brother. "Relax, kid, I'm just going to heal her cut before there is a slight chance of getting it infected," explained Naruto while he gently cupped Katara's neck, healing it as it slowly closed till he finally receded his hand back and walked towards his bag, hoisting it over his shoulder. "This feeling, it's so warm," thought the waterbender of the feeling she felt when the blonde touched her neck. "Neat trick," exclaimed Aang, exited as he inspected where Katara was bleeding only to find nothing there. Turning at Naruto, he asked him, "How did you that?" "It was a technique I learned from the woman I came to consider a mother," said Naruto softly, making Aang feel a little guilty for he didn't intend it to bring bad memories. "I'm sorry." Waving his hand in an uncaring manner, he replied, "Don't worry about it, but let's leave before those pirates decide to come back with more reinforcements," suggested Naruto, changing the subject at the same time. The three nodded their heads. "You can come with us to our camp," exclaimed Aang excitedly, but Saka pulled him back and whispered in his ear, "Aang, are you stupid or something? We don't know if he is a Fire Nation spy. You know, if you're going to be talking about someone, make sure you either do it quietly or say it directly at the person," deadpanned Naruto. Shaking her head disapprovingly, Katara apologized for her brother's comments. "I apologize for Sokka's lack of manners, but he is right, it is quite suspicious that you appear out of nowhere," explained Katara. "Is it because you're traveling with the Avatar?" It was more than a statement than a question when Naruto spoke while raising an eyebrow, causing Saka and Aang to immediately get on the defensive with their weapons pointed at the blonde. "Who are you?" demanded Saka, pointing his machete at him, but the blonde just simply reached into his back, causing the group to tense up, but then just blinked in surprise when the blonde pulled out a scroll and tossed it at Katara, who gasped in surprise when she recognized the hand writing on the scroll. "This is Grand's handwriting!" exclaimed Katara, shocking her brother. Opening the scroll, she read its contents, then looked at Naruto in disbelief. "What does it say, Katara?" asked Saka while he snatched the scroll from her hands. "It says to trust him, for his purpose is needed to bring back balance to the world," said Katara. "That's it?" exclaimed her brother as he rereads the letter over and over again. Ignoring her brother's question, she introduced herself along with her companions. "My name's Katara, the annoying one is my brother Saka, and the one with the arrow on his head is Aang. What's your name?" "I'm Naruto Namikaze, pleased to meet you," replied back the blonde as he smiled softly while extending his hand for a handshake, causing Katara to blush lightly and shyly reached for his hand, softly shaking it. "Let's head back to camp," said Aang out of the blue as he waltzed towards Naruto, grabbing his hand and dragged him, Katara and Sokka following suit. Back at their camp, Naruto just stared in disbelief at the creature that just laid fast asleep in front of him. "What the hell is that?" asked Naruto as he pointed at a giant bison-like with 6 legs with white fur rested as it snored peacefully, till it slowly opened its eyes and turned towards Naruto, staring at one another for a few seconds till Appa licked Naruto, soaking him all over in saliva. Aang jumped on top of the bison's head excitedly. "This is Appa, my flying bison, and this Momo," presenting a white-furred lemur with wings to the blonde. "Ryagite!" deadpanned Naruto as he shook of the saliva from his clothes. Turning towards the siblings, "So why were those pirates chasing you?" he asked them as he went and laid down on Appa's side, resting on his fur. This is surprisingly comfortable," thought the blonde. Katara was doodling with her foot while she looked at the ground, while she was juggling a scroll on her hand, causing Aang and Sokka to gasping shock, but Sokka then got angry. "No wonder those guys were trying to hack us up, you stole their waterbending scroll," exclaimed her brother. Crossing her arms, she replied a little smugly, "I preferred it as high-risk trading," and Aang just laughed her little joke. "Good one, Katara," said Aang. "Wait a minute, you mean to tell me you guys were chased just because she stole some scroll?" asked Naruto while his eyebrow was twitching. "It's not just a scroll, it's a waterbending scroll that shows the steps of certain waterbending forms," she explained, and turning toward Sokka, she continued, "And where do you think they got this scroll, huh? They stole it from a waterbender." "It doesn't matter, Katara, it still doesn't change the fact that you put our lives in danger, or worse if it wasn't for Naruto only for you to just learn some stupid fancy splashes," ranted Sokka as he made some mocking splashing with his hands. "He does carry a valid point, Katara," pointed out the blonde. "What you did was just plain reckless and stupid," he said, causing the girl's shoulders to drop in sadness while Sokka just grinned and nodded his head happily that finally someone agrees with him, but it's only fair to steal back from them if they stole it from someone else. He finished saying with a grin while he sat cross-legged, making Katara smile at him and Sokka to drop his jaw in disbelief. "You're insane." "Tell me something I don't know," shrugged the blonde. "Besides Sokka, these are real waterbending forms, you know how crucial it is for Aang to learn waterbending," exclaimed Katara looking at her brother in the eye. "Whatever," scoffed Sokka, walking away as he didn't want to argue with her stubborn sister. "What's done is done. You guys managed to steal the scroll, so make the best of it and learn from it," suggested Naruto as he relaxed with his eyes closed with Momo waiting on his stomach. "He's right, Katara, let's go," said Aang walking towards the river bank. Meanwhile, back at the trading village, Prince Zuko and his uncle, Iroh, were roaming through the market, looking for a tile for some board game, only to find none, making Zuko to get angry, exclaiming that it was a complete waste of time only to be proven wrong as his uncle had bought other items for decorations. Let's go to that ship," said the general as he walked, pointing at the ship where Aang and his friends first visited. Once inside the ship, Iroh was having a frenzy as he found lots of exquisite items while Zuko just simply looked bored out of his mind, till he caught on the conversation between the merchants within the ship. "We lost the water tribe girl and the little monk that was traveling with him," said the pirate that received a black eye, courtesy of Naruto. "How were you able to lose 3 kids when you had 15 men with you?" barked the captain as he glared at his underling. "It wasn't my fault, Captain," we had them cornered at an alley and managed to catch them off guard with the girl taken hostage, but some stranger appeared out of nowhere and brutally defeated us," whimpered the pirate, cowering from his captain's gaze. "Gore, they will pay for their insolence," growled the captain. Hearing the descriptions that almost resembled the Avatar, he approached them. "This monk, did he had a blue arrow on his head?" asked the prince, while his uncle made a monkey face while holding a monkey statue next to his face. Back with the gang, Aang and Katara were standing next to the lake, instructing Aang to hold the scroll while she tried to mimic the steps for the water whip. "I just want to learn this move and then the scroll is all yours," said Katara to Aang. Leaning back against the rock that Saka was using as a seat, Naruto was watching from his spot how sloppy and rigid Katara went through the steps, causing the water to bubbly rise into the air, hitting Katara right on her forehead as she made the whipping motion in the end. Crying out in pain as she held her head while Naruto just simply shook his head with Saka laughing at her. "What's so funny?" asked Katara angrily. "You deserve that," said her sibling, "you been duped Aang, she just wanted the scroll so she could teach herself." "I'll give him the scroll once I'm done mastering this technique," barked his sister. She went through the steps again and this she managed to get it half right, hitting Momo right in the tail as the lemur turned around and hissed at Katara. "Arg! Why I can't get this right?" shouted Katara in desperation. Naruto got off the rock and stretched his arms out to get rid of the soreness as he began to walk towards the two. Aang was about to demonstrate how to properly do it, but was interrupted by Naruto as he just shook his head. "I'll handle this." Turning towards Katara who still looked frustrated, "The first thing you're doing wrong is that you're too tensed up, you need to relax," said the blonde with a bored/lazy expression on his face while placing his hands inside his pockets. "What do you know, huh? You don't look like you're a waterbender," snapped Katara and everyone went quiet at her outburst while Naruto just simply stared at her with the same look as he stopped walking, standing in front of her. Taking his hand out of his pocket, slowly raising it into the air, he tapped Katara on her head using his middle finger and index finger, causing her to rub her head from the slight pain. "Second, never let your anger get a hold of you for you will lack the focus required," wisely said Naruto. "Now, apologize to the lemur for whipping his furry ass," he ordered while pointing towards Momo who was rubbing its behind painfully. Kneeling in front of Momo, she apologized while she softly caressed the spot where he got hit till she was called back by Naruto to stand with him near the lake. "Aang, let me see the steps for the form," and Aang brought the scroll to Naruto, looking carefully at each step in order to perform the water whip. Nodding his head at Aang, he turned back towards Katara in sensei mode. "As I said before, you're too tense when performing the steps," said Naruto as he slowly began to do every step perfectly, slowly as if it was a slow dance, leaving the waterbender in training in awe. "No matter what style of fighting, whether be used for bending or not, you must always maintain your focus, yet with an empty mind," he said as he was halfway done through the form, "finding your balance while shifting your weight as you go through each of the steps, but the hard part is to maintain it as you go along," he finished saying, ending perfectly as he went to the last stance of the form. "Now your turn," instructed Naruto. Katara nodded and tried to mimic Naruto's movement, but wasn't as successful, but she wasn't as rigid as before while Naruto watched with a keen eye in seeing what mistakes she was making till she was done as she reached the final form. "How did I do?" she asked nervously as she saw Naruto had an unreadable expression on his face. "You did well, if you were trying to learn earthbending," said the blonde a little harshly causing Katara to cringe. Aang jumped to her defense, "Don't talk to her like that. She's doing the best she can." Ignoring the Avatar's outburst, the blonde continued his lecture. "Katara, you think that bending is to simply master the forms? To be able to perform the difficult of moves? No, till you can bend the essence of water itself, you'll never be considered a true master." "The essence itself?" asked the girl, confused at this logic. Nodding his head, he clarified, "In order to truly master waterbending, you must be like the water itself, formless, shapeless like water, for if you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup, you put water into the bottle, it becomes the bottle, you put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot, for water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my young trainee. A/N. She just stood there as she listened to every word he was saying, mesmerizing it into her mind as everything was starting to become clear as to what she was doing wrong. Getting into the first stance, she slowly began to repeat the steps for the water whip, performing it with a more relaxed yet focused mind with lots of fewer mistakes from the previous tries, finally ending it with a perfect stance. Looking back at Naruto, she saw he just simply nodded his head in approval with smile on his face. Happy that she had done well, she ran up to the blonde and surprisingly, hugged him tight, till she realized what she had done. She rapidly separated herself from him, blushing madly, stuttering as she apologized. Caught off guard, Naruto simply waved it off. "That's enough practice for today, let's rest for today," said Naruto as he walked off towards the forest to catch some fish. Later at night, the group was around the campfire, cooking the fish that Naruto had caught earlier over an open fire, enjoying the warmness that the fire gave. Naruto was seen sitting cross-legged, poking with a stick while he watched the fire as it danced around scorching the fish, his mind drifting on the loss he has suffered. He was denied to grow old with his friends, with his wife, denied he was watching the birth of his son, to be a father as he watched his grow to become a man. His home and way of life was taken from him by Sasuke. Sasuke, the blonde avatar, narrowed his eyes angrily as he growled within his mind as his anger began to rise, slowly crushing the wooden stick he had on his grip till it finally was crushed in half by his strength, snapping him out of his trance, causing his three companions to look at him curiously. Rubbing the back of his head sleeplessly, he apologized till he smelled that the fish was ready and passed out a fish to everyone, eating peacefully till they were done. Saka and Aang, feeling full and tired, bid a good night, leaving Katara and Naruto by themselves. Curious, Katara scooted next to Naruto. "Tell me about you, Naruto," she said, catching the blonde off guard. "What is it that you want to know about Katara?" he asked her, barely tilting his head towards her. "Do you know any bending?" she asked him randomly. Shaking his head, "No, I don't, I just use the style I was taught by my master, despite my inability to bend, but to compensate for that, I also managed to learn a swordsmanship to help me in battle," he half-lied. "And what bending discipline you were taught?" she asked him, intrigued as she remembers how he took on the pirates and defeated them effortlessly. "I was taught the fire-bending discipline," he replied, causing her to gasp in shock. "My master taught it to me as a means of surviving in this war when I was young, and when we parted ways, I took upon myself to modify it to a point it would be useful against any bender, no matter what the element." "You were taught by a fire-bender?" she almost shouted at him, scooting away from him. "Are you going to judge just because of the background my master came from, or are you going to judge me as for the person that I am?" The blonde asked her without turning his head. "Never judge someone for the actions of others, for not many agree with the opinions other may have, just as I don't agree with this war." Seeing the logic on his words, Katara calmed down somewhat, but was still unnerved. "I apologize," but the man in front of her just simply waved it off. "How can you be so laid back?" she asked him. "If I thought about all the times my village used to scorn my existence, I would miss the bright side of life," was her reply. The two stayed quiet as they continued to watch the fire. "Do you have a home or a family?" she asked him suddenly, getting Naruto uneasy when he was asked if he had a family as a lump began to develop on his throat, staying quiet for a few minutes, slowly closing his eyes. "I don't have a home or a family, not anymore. I lost it all to a firebender that wielded black flames," muttered the blonde softly, causing Katara to regret her outburst of comparing him to the Fire Nation soldiers, but felt somewhat happy that they both share a common bond. "I know the pain you're going through," whispered Katara softly. Having heard her, Naruto snapped his head sharply at her, somewhat angry at her claim. "What would you know of losing someone you care for?" he asked, glaring at her angrily, but despite his anger, she just stared at him softly with those light blue eyes of hers. "When I was little, I lost my mother to a Fire Nation raid as they were searching for me, just because I am a waterbender," she replied, looking down at the fire, sadly recalling the day she lost her mother with some tears beginning to develop in her eyes. Hearing this, Naruto felt bad for almost snapping at her. "I'm sorry." Shaking her head softly, she said, "It's okay, at least we both know that we aren't alone when we mourn our loved ones," and with that she got up and walked away towards her sleeping bag, leaving Naruto by himself. Getting a bit tired himself, Naruto made sure everyone was asleep, making sure the coast was clear, the blonde simply waved his hand around in the air and formed a small ball of water out the moisture in the air, splashing the fire to extinguish it before leaning back on Appa to drift off to his slumber. In the middle of the night, while everyone was asleep, Katara woke up and gathered the scroll, heading out somewhere further away from camp so she wouldn't wake up the group while she trained. Repeating the form she did, but with more ease from the help she had from Naruto, exclaiming happily as she almost had it down. Unfortunately, she didn't count it to be heard by the banished prince with his new allies, as they searched through the river banks for the teen and the stranger that stole their scroll. Hearing her voice, the pirates landed ashore, alerting Katara as she went to investigate what had caused those noises as she peeked through the bushes, only to find the ship that belonged to the pirates along with a small vessel that belonged to the Fire Nation Navy. Slowly backing away, she retreated in order to alert the others, but she was caught by Prince Zuko, holding her hostage as he tried to find out the Avatar's location, but was unsuccessful. Bribing the pirates to help him once more in capturing the Avatar, he headed out to their camp location. Morning had arrived, and Naruto slowly began to wake up, noticing right away that Katara was missing. Jumping to his feet, the blonde alerted the other two. Saka. Aang. Get up, Katara's missing, barked Naruto as he grabbed his Sakabato, looking around for signs of Katara, causing Saka and Aang to shoot up from their bags. Looking around, Saka called out, "Where did she go?" Reaching for their bag, he immediately noticed the scroll was missing. "What's wrong?" asked Aang, still half asleep. "I don't believe it," scoffed Saka, throwing the bag to the floor. "She took the scroll, she's obsessed with that thing. It's just a matter of time before she gets us in deep trouble." Suddenly, Naruto grabbed the handle of his as he got on the defensive, scaring the two as they hugged each other in fright. "What the hell is wrong with you?" shouted Saka. "We are not alone," muttered the blonde as he looked around, never dropping his guard. Letting go of Aang, Saka got up and walked towards Naruto. "You're being paranoid. Do you see anyone?" said Saka as he extended both his arms forward in emphasis as to they were alone, but before he could finish his sentence, a rope with a heavy attached at the end shot out of nowhere and tangled itself around his wrists, pulling Saka towards the bushes where a pirate wrapped in bandages stood, twirling around the rope in the air before launching it once again at Saka but missed as he rolled out of the way towards his bag where his machete laid. Charging at the pirate. "Saka!" shouted Naruto as he was ready to go help him, but was interrupted by two pirates wearing what appeared to be black ninja outfits, wearing oni masks, each carrying fencing swords. "So you must be the golden-haired stranger that beat our comrades," stated one of the masked swordsmen. "We'll teach you not to meddle in our affairs," stated the other one. Both raised their swords as they got into their stance and charged at the blonde with their swords pointed forward. Naruto simply waited as they came, and began to dodge as soon as the first strikes began. Dodging, parrying left and right, sidestepping side to side or ducking underneath as he retreated, drifting further away from camp, with the masked Oni pirates chasing after him, managing to nick him a few times as he was barely able to dodge some of their strikes. Naruto growled as he was kept on the defensive, using the sheath as means of parrying some of the sword strikes. Unfortunately for him, for things got worse, for he didn't notice a small hole behind him. Stepped right in it, he got his foot stuck in it, falling backwards as it gave the Oni pirates a chance to end it as they dashed forward, crossing their swords with the intent to kill. Touché! But the blonde countered by placing the sheathed sword in between the swords, using his other leg to push himself forward to stop them on their tracks as they struggled to cut through the scabbard in order to reach the blonde. But to their surprise, Naruto wasn't even struggling that much as he used one arm to maintain them at bay. Getting a good distance from them as he pushed them back without much force, Naruto got his foot out of the hole while gripping the handle of his sword, unsheathing it as he raised it in the air, and without warning he swiftly stroked them down as he danced around them. Swinging his sword at blinding speed till he stopped a couple of steps away from them, with both parties standing still till Naruto slowly placed his sword back on his sheath with an audible click. The sword shattered to pieces and the two swordsmen slowly fell to the ground moaning in pain inflicted by the blonde. "That takes care of them," muttered the blonde, noticing that he was far from camp, and began to run. Once he reached the campsite, he looks around his surroundings for any sign of fighting, but found none. "Saka! Aang!" shouted Naruto, but they weren't nowhere in sight. Damn it! Cursed the blonde, where could have they been taken? He asked himself he sought any trails that could lead him to his newfound friends, till a thought hit him, wait a minute, I could track them the same way I did to find the original pain, he thought as he kneeled down to one knee on the floor with his eyes closed. Placing his hand on the ground as he concentrated his energy, bring the tattoos on his arm to life as he tried to feel the life force of the gang. His vision became blurry for a few seconds till he found the location of where they were being held captive at, snapping his eyes open, he got up and turned towards their location. Bingo, he said as he ran at high speeds towards their location. Back at the place where Katara was first captured and being held tied by her hands onto the tree, looking down ashamed since it was her fault they were captured. Turning towards Aang, who had his hands tied as he was being held by a pirate with her brother Saka, who was struggling trying to tear the ropes using his strength, Aang, I'm so sorry, this is my entire fault. Aang looking stoic, he tried to make her feel better, no Katara, it isn't, causing Saka to twitch in annoyance. As a matter of fact, it kind of is, said Iroh from the background to Katara. Alright, give me the boy, ordered Zuko to the captain while holding the scroll in his hands. You give me the scroll first, countered the captain as he held Aang by the shoulders. Naruto landed on top of a tree branch without sound, sitting right underneath Katara, watching, and waiting for the right moment to jump in until Sokka caught a sight of him. Giving him the sign to keep quiet and mouthed slowly to make a distraction, to which he nodded, and an idea popped into his mind as he heard the argument/conversation between the two, adding his own 2 coins of copper into the equation. You really are going to trade the Avatar over for a piece of parchment? Asked Sokka smugly as he leaned towards the surprised captain. Seeing what the water peasant was up to, he shouted at the captain. Don't listen to him. He's just trying to turn us against one another, growled the banished prince, but the captain didn't pay him no heed as he turned towards Aang. Your friend is the Avatar. Sure is, and I bet he would fetch a lot more in the black market, suggested Sokka, pretending like he had no idea as to what he was doing, catching the attention of the other pirates. Shut your damn mouth, you peasant! Raged Zuko, while Aang also suggested to keep his mouth shut, nervous as he noticed the greedy looks that the pirates were giving him, making the situation get worse. However, uncaringly Sokka continued, why? I'm just saying, it's bad businesses. Seeing that he had them eating from the palm of his hand, he gave one more final nudge, just imagine how much more the Fire Lord himself would give for the Avatar, you guys would be set for life, exclaimed Sokka as he just clasped his hands together. Convinced by Sokka's words, the captain turned at Zuko, you can keep the scroll, we can buy 100 of them with the reward we can get from the kid, and with that he and his crew turned towards their ship, bringing Sokka and Aang in tow. His eyes turned dark as he glared at them, you'll regret breaking a deal with me, and sent a kick, causing fire to sprout out of his feet towards the pirates, who managed to dodge the flames and reached for their weapons. The same pirate that got his ass handed down by Naruto rushed towards the firebenders while launching smoke screens as they exploded once they hit the ground, creating large clouds of smokes as the pirates jumped in it to engage with the prince's soldiers, while the prince himself engaged in battle against the captain. Seeing that everyone else was fighting among each other, Naruto jumped down the tree, landing behind Katara. Who's there? She asked, getting tensed. Relax, it's me, replied the blonde as he used with his wind affinity to cut the ropes, setting her free. Thanks, she said as she rubbed the soreness out of her wrists. No problem, now go head towards the ship, I'll send your brother and Aang once I've set them free and pull them out of the melee, he ordered, I'll get their attention and buy you guys enough time to get out of here, getting ready to jump into the fight, but was stopped by Katara when she grabbed his arm. But what about you? She asked worriedly, aren't you going to come with us? Don't worry about me, Katara, taking Aang to the northern tribe is more important, I can handle a couple of pirates, he assured her, I'll catch up once I make sure they won't follow us, K. Katara didn't want to leave him, but he was right. Nodding her head, she let go of his arm and ran towards the pirate's ship. Naruto turned towards the plumes of smoke and jumped into it with his sword drawn, immediately stroked down pirates and soldiers alike. A soldier went with a thrust of his halberd from behind, but simply jumped and delivered a spinning back kick right in the face of the soldier and ducked under to avoid a sword slash from a pirate. Naruto slashed the man upward, and continued slashing to the side as he intercepted another soldier coming from his left, hitting him on the stomach, causing the man to groan in pain and pass out as he landed on the ground. Using the vibrations on the ground, Naruto tried to find Aang, and found him. He did as he began to run towards him. Aang was walking with precaution through the smoke, for he couldn't see a thing except feel the change of air currents around him whenever someone was attacking, dodging and evading out of instinct. Suddenly he felt a hand on his shoulder, causing him to scream as he turned to blow the person away, but stopped once he found out it was Naruto that had surprised him. Using the blade of his sword, the blonde cut the ropes and freed the airbender. Go to Katara, she's heading towards the pirate's ship, help her set sail and get out of here, he told Aang. What about you? You can't take on all these pirates and firebenders, exclaimed the Avatar. I'll be fine, reassured the blonde. Now go, I'll send Saka once I find him. Aang. Where are you? That is if that idiot doesn't get himself killed first, deadpanned the blonde Avatar. Now go. And with that, Aang ran, jumping out of the smoke from above. Seeing that Saka was crawling out of the cloud of smoke as well, he called out to him. Saka! Run! Seeing Aang sprinting towards the ship, he followed, finding Katara trying to push the ship into the water but was unsuccessful. Both boys then decided to help her, but despite with the extra strength, they didn't make it budge, resorting to rise the water level using waterbending. Once the ship was on water, the group climbed aboard and set course away from the enemies. The captain and Zuko were still fighting, parrying sword strikes and flame attacks, that is until Zuko's uncle intervened, looking at the captain. Are you busy fighting that you don't see your own ship setting sail? Uncle, we don't have time for your proverbs, ranted the banished prince. Pointing towards the river, Iroh exclaimed, it's no proverb. Both men turned towards where the general was pointing at, and the captain gasped when he saw his own ship sailing away. My ship. And was about to run with his crew that had claimed the prince's ship, but the sound of groaning and yelling stopped him, gaining the attention of the firebenders as well, turned towards where the others were fighting, only to find a pile of bodies laying on the ground, both soldiers and pirates alike. As a lone man kept fighting against everyone, striking everyone who stood in his path down. Gold hair, black clothing with 3 marks on each of his cheeks, muttered the captain, it's him. Exclaimed while growling, and rushed with his sword poised to pierce him from behind. Dispatching another pirate with a hard punch straight at the face while blocking with his sword and halberd wielded by a Fire Nation soldier, the blonde sensed someone coming from behind, and turned slightly to see someone, who he presumed to be the captain of the crew, coming at him with the intent to kill. Rapidly, the blonde parried the halberd upward and launched a hard kick into the soldier's chest, sending into a tree and landed unconscious, so he could bring his sword up and block the thrust for a few seconds till he slightly twisted his body to the side as he used the captain's momentum against him as he lost his footing and went forward. Allowing Naruto enough space to spin his body, delivering a sinning roundhouse kick into the back of the captain's head, knocking him out as well. Iroh, attentively, was paying attention at the young man that fought the pirate, and was impressed with the level of skill he portrayed. Placing his hand on top of his nephew's shoulder, stopping him before he even had a chance of engaging against this man, he said, Zuko, go and try to get back our ship, I'll deal with him myself. Zuko turned back towards his uncle as he was about to argue, but the look on his uncle's eyes told him differently. They were hard and cold, for this was the dragon of the west that stood in front of him now, not his lazy, bubbly uncle, and so nodding his head, he ran passing the blonde as he noticed that he was also staring back at his uncle. Iroh walked towards Naruto, till he stood a few feet away from him, glaring at each other's eyes without saying a word. Your swordsmanship skills as well as your fighting ability is superb, praised the general, surprising Naruto slightly, but managed to regain his composure and replied back with a smirk, I thank you for the compliment, but you're no slouch yourself, for I can see in your eyes the hidden power within you. As well as the wisdom from going through so many battles. Taken aback at this, Iroh looked into the blonde's eyes and was shocked to see such eyes in one so young still, eyes of a man who has been through hell and back from fighting. Curious asked him, how is it for someone not a few years older than my nephew, have such eyes? Sheathing his sword and placing onto the ground, Naruto assumed his firebending stance as he replied, never judge a book by its cover, for you'll be surprised, but our time for talking has ended, hasn't it? Nodding softly, the general went also into his fire stance and both waited for the unseen signal. Both of them stood still till the waves crashed against the rocks and Naruto rushed at Iroh with his first beeped back, and Iroh just jumped and did a double kick, launching to fire embers at the blonde, which Naruto dodged without problem, but the general wasn't finished as he sent punch after punch, launching multiple fire blasts at the blonde, who either blocked or swatted away the embers without problem, surprising Iroh as he saw the youngster wasn't getting burnt marks on his skin, and passed his defenses so easily, as the Naruto began his assault of sending punches at the general. Iroh blocked and parried some of the punches, at times he had to jump over kicks or duck under them, and countered back as he launched his own parry of punches, both dodging each blow, or countering and blocking as they sidestepped side to side till they both came to a lock with both their hands clasped, trying to outpower each other. Staring at one another with defiance, till Iroh breathed fire from his mouth, covering the blonde whole as he was sent back, but Naruto stood unharmed, resuming his position. The general retook back his position, deciding to wait patiently for his opponent to get in range to deliver devastating blow, as he kept on sending weak attacks to lower his guard. Naruto was rushing towards the general again, easily parrying the fire embers the firebender kept sending. What's he up to? Thought Naruto, but seeing the general launching a ground stream of fire, making Naruto to jump in the air straight at Iroh, but he had anticipated this as he beeped both his fists back and launched a barrel punch at the blonde once he was in range, fire exploding from his fists into the blonde's chest, launching him onto the river. Steam rising from the water. Iroh waited for the blonde to rise up from the water, but nothing happened, until the water shot up with the blonde jumping out of the water, but something was different in him this time, that Iroh could tell, for some strange markings had now appeared on his arms and his eyes still retained their blue color. But the only difference was that the pupils were slit instead of round. Taking no chances, Iroh breathed deep and launched a strong fire stream when he extended both hands forward, but to his surprise, the blonde also extended both his hands forward, launching his own stream of fire, but to his shock, its fire was pure white. Both streams met head-on, but Naruto's easily overpowered Iroh's as it engulfed it whole. Seeing the danger he was in, Iroh jumped out of the way in time, watching the stream flow through, till it dispersed completely before hitting the forest. Looking back, he saw the blonde rushing at him with his fist covered in flames, ready to hit him, but Iroh managed to counter by sending a crescent kick, launching a crescent flame at the blonde, and having no choice, the blonde shot his fist forward clashing with the fire, causing a small explosion. After the smoke cleared, both Iroh and Naruto faced each other again as they stood in their stance. "You're good, old man," complimented the blonde, causing the old man to chuckle. "So are you, my boy. What is your name?" said the general. "My name is Naruto Namikaze," replied the blonde. "And what is my opponent's name?" "The name is Iroh, known as the Dragon of the West," replied the general. "Well, Iroh, I hate to end the fun, but this is where I must take my leave, but rest assured, we shall meet again," said Naruto before he used a fire sunshin to disappear, causing Iroh to shield his eyes from the extreme heat. Uncovering his eyes, the general stared at the spot where Naruto stood, grinning. He muttered, "That we will, Namikaze, that we will." Meanwhile, the group was still sailing away from the pirates who stole Zuko's ship in order to catch up to them, and caught with them they did as they tried to take back their ship, but Aang proved to be a challenge as he sent them sailing overboard using his limited knowledge of waterbending, with a little help from Katara in the end, who finally managed to learn the water whip. As for Saka, he had his hands full as he struggled with two pirates, but only managed to get his ass handed to him in the end. The two pirates that were tussling with Saka were soon sent sailing thanks to Aang with a little airbending. "Aang, look!" shouted Katara as she pointed forward, revealing a huge waterfall ahead. "Oh no," whispered Aang, not noticing a pirate, the same one who has a black eye, courtesy of Naruto, managing to sneak behind him. Feeling someone behind, Aang turned around, just stared at the pirate, till he pulled out the whistle he had bought earlier and began to blow on it. The bruised pirate just looked at the airbender as if he was stupid, and raised his sword again to strike him down, but Saka intervened by jumping from behind and sent him overboard, looking at Aang as if he were crazy. "Have you lost your damn mind? This no time for flute practice," yelled Saka. Running down the deck, she yelled, we can stop the boat, Aang, together pushed towards the water. And so they began to bend the water to push it backward, creating small whirlpools at the edge of the waterfall. It worked! Exclaimed the waterbender excitedly, that is until Saka turned around and ruined the moment. We have another problem, said Saka, pointing back at the stream, where Zuko's ship was coming straight at them head-on, colliding on the side as it sent the three of them overboard and down the waterfall as they jumped off the ship, only to be saved by Appa long before they splashed down below. I knew the bison whistle will come in handy, thanks Appa, said Aang, while Saka sit at the back, relieved at being saved. Yeah buddy, we owe you one, and Appa just rumbled his welcomes. Kneeling over the edge of the saddle, looking at the ground from above, Katara was trying to spot their blonde friend, but couldn't spot him anywhere. Saka seeing her acting weird, he voiced his concern. What's wrong, Katara? I'm trying to find Naruto, but I can't see him anywhere. I hope he didn't get caught by the pirates, said Katara in concern. I'm sure he managed to escape. I mean, after all, he was decimating those pirates with just a sword like they were not even a challenge, exclaimed Saka, as he admired the blonde's skills with the sword while leaning back on a traveling bag, a bag which Aang quickly recognized. That's Naruto's traveling bag. Getting off the bag, the group noticed a small note attached to it. Katara reached up for the note and began to read out loud. I apologize for leaving like this. But for now we must go our separate ways. For I will gather as much information as I can about future Fire Nation attacks. Till then, stay safe. Naruto. She finished reading it with a tinge of sadness in her voice, while her brother softly an arm around her shoulder. Cheer up, he said, we'll meet again, and he doesn't like the type of person to break a promise, soothed her brother, to which she simply just nodded as they flew into the distance. Meanwhile, from afar atop of a tree branch, the blonde Avatar watched as they flew far away. Hoisting his sheathed sword over his shoulder, Naruto jumped off the tree to land on the ground and began walking towards his next destination, but not before he looked back once again to where now the flying bison became nothing but a white dot. Stay alive till we meet again, muttered the blonde as he resumed his walk and disappeared deep within the forest, leaving no traces of him ever standing there. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now, and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.